of course, now the two gentlemen of the moment. So I'm Mary Sabatino. I'm the Vice President of Galerie Lelong, and welcome to our 21st Dialogues, Discussions with Contemporary Artists. So today we have the pleasure of a talk between Alteronce Gumby, an artist colleague of Leo's, and Leonardo Drew, whose work is on view in the gallery. This is Leo's third show with us, and we are delighted to welcome the new body of work and the explosion. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about both artists, and for more information you can consult our website. So Leonardo Drew is known for compositions that are on the border between chaos and order. Some people have said it's as if Apollo and Dionysus meet and explode in the middle. Leonardo has had many exhibitions in many places all over the world, and recent museum shows have been at the Amon Carter Museum in Texas, the Yorkshire Sculpture Park in England, the Wadsworth Athenaeum, and the Phoenix Art Museum. That was the last one that we did this summer. Leo's work is also in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, in the Hirshhorn Museum, and right now on view at Tate Modern London. Alteronce Gumby is an artist and a local New Yorker. Does that mean you were born in New York?
No, I live here.
Oh, okay. He has a multivalent practice of painting, film, ceramics, installation, and performance. Alteronce earned his BFA from Hunter and his MFA from the Yale School of Art, and lived to tell the tale. One of his great inspirations is the cosmos, and he is a member of the Amateur Astronomers Society. His most recent exhibition was Dark Matters and The Color of Everything at Nicola Vassell Gallery and at the Allentown Art Museum. He is now preparing for another show at Nicola's Gallery in October. And there has been much talk about his work in the press, including ArtNet, ArtNet News, Bomb, and the Brooklyn Rail, Culture, Days, and Frieze, and Vogue. So after Alteronce and Leo trade questions, you'll have an opportunity for questions. And will we hand a mic around, John? We'll have a mic. So thank you, and please join me in welcoming Alteronce and Leo.
There you go. Well, thank you, Mary, for that spirited introduction. Thank you, Leo, for inviting me, and the staff here at Galerie Lelong, and all of you guys for attending, being a witness to this conversation.
Uncle Leo.
Unc. Yeah, Uncle Leo. You're hearing me refer to him as Unc throughout the conversation. Unc is very much a friend, a mentor, a guiding light for a lot of emerging artists, such as myself, and actually someone who I've actually studied in undergrad, in grad school, and so to be here.
I feel so old.
I mean, it's great, you know, to be here in conversation with you.
My goodness, you can't see it coming.
No, you really can't, and but I feel very blessed and fortunate. And I guess just for those who aren't so familiar with your work, maybe we could season the room a little bit by talking about how you got here. And you know, you're a child of Bridgeport, Connecticut. You started making art very young, I believe.
First exhibition, 13.
13. Where was that? And this was at the ABC.
Citibank.
It was at Citibank.
It was some bank, I don't know, National Bank or something.
Okay.
But I can only tell you that beginnings are always interesting.
Yeah.
As you're sort of alluding to, just the idea of realizing that this is something that you actually can do as a child. So you got to know before 13 there was already work, you know, being created. Being created and exhibited, which is a huge thing. You know, you weren't just hanging them on your, you know, mom's refrigerator
or pinning them to the wall.
Well,
This
like
is
mentorship, like you're saying, I'm mentoring now. I have disciples.
And so going back to that early mentorship.
Well, I had artists in Bridgeport area that
Right.
were, known, like, the real thing, making things. And they took me under their wing. So, I mean, it's not like you were 13 and going around, hawking your work. I mean, you have to have people who know how and understand the business of that, So that was how I was able to sort of like, even realize that what I was doing was of worth,
Right.
Yeah.
And what type of work were you making back then?
Well, I mean, if you look at that photograph, it was like, it's like life-size Captain America, And I remember the photographer who was shooting for the newspaper. He was just laughing, And of course, I'm standing there angry, and it comes out in the photo. You can see this angry black kid with holes in his coat, standing in front of his Captain America. He knew that this was a political statement, and I couldn't comprehend that at 13, But the fact is, you're standing in front of a Captain America and you're from the hood, and it's a life-size Captain America. It speaks volumes,
No, for sure. And fast forward now, we have a black Captain America.
Oh no, it's like, that's a listen. I'm rolling with the times also.
Right.
They could put me in Captain America and I'll wear that.
Well, Halloween's coming up, so maybe we can oblige. But yeah, so this mentorship was happening at the ABCD Cultural Center, right?
Yeah.
And you were making cartoon
Yeah.
drawings, and you had interests actually from Marvel and
And
DC,
DC,
right? So there was talent there. There was skill.
real life
there
stuff.
could have been another path for you, but yet you chose this one. What was the defining moment that kind of
Jackson
shifted
Pollock.
you? Jackson Pollock.
He was a doorway, and I think it's a doorway for a lot of abstractionists. It doesn't really matter where you're from, but once you've seen his work, you're affected. And for me, it was just like a matter of like understanding what I was doing was art and what he was doing was art, but there was, there are levels of commitment and also levels of like, of realization.
Right.
And being an illustrator, you can enter through that door, but if you're looking at abstraction at its highest, that would be Jackson Pollock. And it's like, okay, Jackson Pollock.
Jackson Pollock, right. I mean, definitely in terms of scale and medium, right? I think you were working probably, colored pencil inks, drawing on paper, and then seeing Jackson Pollock.
In black and white.
In black and white. So it's a photograph.
It was in the library, that little book, black and white.
So it was just on a small scale as opposed
it's
to...
still affected.
Wow.
So it was a book on the modernists, and it was, it was David Smith and Motherwell, and Jackson Pollock was the one that stood out.
Right.
And when I talked to Mark Bradford, he also went through that door. So it's interesting to know, like, the abstractionists, black folks who were abstractionists, the commitment of artists like, Jack Whitten, my God, out of Washington, Sam Gilliam.
Yeah, Sam.
I mean, I knew all these guys, and I knew that. Like when I was in school at Cooper Union, Jack was my teacher. And he said, this is it. This is where, we're not allowed in. You're going to be teaching. And I said,
That's
no.
what he told you? He said you're going to be teaching?
I said, no. I said, I don't know how, but it's like I have to make my word at 24/7.
Yeah.
So I knew I was going to be parking at teaching. So been asked to teach, haven't done it. I think it's a great profession, but I am an addict. Straight up. Like I have to be making things all the time.
And I remember I'm going to say, I binge watched 2 hours of your interviews last night on YouTube.
Oh, all right.
And so you made this one comment, you were talking about Cooper Union. You said you're the greediest student.
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you mean by that? Because I resonate with that, especially as an art student. But I want to hear your take on that.
Well, greedy just means, if you are about it, meaning like, about making art, then you understand that, okay, there are these avenues that you can go in when you're in school. When you're in school, it's just, the traditional route is you finish up your undergrad, and then you go into the master's,
Master's.
right? And I knew that. I said, man, I don't really need that master's. I need another year at Cooper.
Right.
And of course, at that time, Cooper was free. And it was like I said, like, okay, it's like I had to fight, So I got folks like Jack and a bunch of the other teachers together, and they just like, and they were like, because if they put you in there, and they want you out. Free education.
Yeah,
next
push you through
one,
the door,
next
right?
one.
Yeah.
And so and I said, no, I want more time. And yes, greedy. Yes, I was that, and I got it.
Wow.
So I got the extra year, and that's all I needed. I just needed that extra year so that I could actually, just understand what it meant to sort of like be an artist. I'm full.
Yeah, that's very telling of a character, of your character, especially a character of someone who's kind of, dare I say, obsessed or passionate about something. Because I don't know how many people here think back to their undergrad, going through their studies, you're in your senior year, and think like, give me one more of those. Like, it's not necessarily something people really ask for, But I guess you were debt free. A couple other people in here are probably still working on that debt.
Yeah.
And so, but I think that being an artist, it kind of, you find something, you find your lane, and you really want to dig in as much as you can. And so from there, I guess you said you didn't want to take the teaching route, right? Which is what they were, Jack was
I didn't know
saying.
what was out there for me, honestly. I just knew that 24/7 of me, it still is a thing. I still want that. The me time.
Right.
I mean, all the time I want me time.
Yeah.
So that, I've never been married. No kids. So
Yeah.
it's like it tells you a whole lot about. I mean, I look and it's like, it's like, wow, it's like those things didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the conventions of life, I think, did not occur.
So what was your path after Cooper?
Well, I did work at Christie's, the auction house.
Okay.
And I remember when they hired me, they asked, how long you think you're going to be with it? Because in some way they knew that I was not going to be hanging out,
Right.
At Christie's.
Leo
And
doesn't
they
seem like
hired
he's
me
gonna stick
anyway.
around long.
I said a year and a half, and they hired me anyway. And
Oh, really?
and it was around the time that the Van Gogh sunflowers was probably the highest. And they sold it, and they gave all of us a bonus, and I was able to get out there even earlier.
Oh, wow, so you didn't stay a year and a half?
I did not.
Was it a year?
What's that?
Did you stay a year or 6 months?
It was probably about a year and something. Well, it wasn't a year and a half.
Okay.
So
and
yeah.
were you? Did you start making work? Did you have a studio?
Absolutely. No, I worked in my apartment in Washington Heights and slept in the bathtub, and the whole place was like a studio.
It was like this.
Oh, yeah. And when the fire department came, this is exactly what they saw.
They were like,
They
are you squatting?
No. Listen, it's the kind of things that I was literally cooking in that apartment.
Yeah.
Caused the fire department to come through. And it was like smoke pouring out of the windows.
Right.
It was like you're steaming. I wasn't burning things, but I was like steam. I found a way to steam canvas and make it illuminate. And there are photos of that in one of the books, but it's like the neighbors called the fire department, and I'm looking out the window, and they seen this smoke pouring out, from the window, and I'm looking out of the window. So I don't know what they're seeing because I'm not aware that, to them it was like he's on fire, So they came in, and they the way they come in, they don't knock, they just take the door right off the hinges.
Yeah.
And they push you out of the way and then go in, and it's like, oh, this guy's like, they were trying to figure out what I was doing.
Right.
And it was like, it's like he's burning something. It's like when they're talking to the folks down on the street. And it's like, I think I'm going to jail. Because, because I don't know, with these folks with badges and stuff and hats, it's like, it's all the same to me.
No, for sure.
To any black person, it's like, this is trouble.
It's like the 70s, 80s?
No, this is 80s.
Yeah.
Mid 80s. And they were like, and I told them what I told them was an artist that got off me. They just said, get a fire extinguisher.
Right.
So it was all good,
That's
But, that is licensed. You can get yourself out of trouble.
Just by saying you're an artist.
I realized that a number of times now. Yes.
So next time you want to get a parking ticket, just say, I'm an artist, and see how that works. Well, so you talk about you were cooking up things. What were you cooking up then? Were we seeing kind of seeds of the work that we're seeing now? Or no?
Well, all of it's part of language and vocabulary. So it's like continuing to add to your vocabulary is what I've been doing. I mean, even now with the mirrors, I mean, this is kind of the new sort of direction in terms of how I see color. I mean, now it's actually literally reflective, you know, and it's a continued sort of pathway to realize next iteration, you know. So I think that I'm always asking questions. That is a carrot. Yeah. The questions are the carrot, and the unknown is the thing that you need to resolve, you know. And so not knowing is probably the best position I could be in, you know, is not knowing.
No, that's great. So since we're on it, let's talk about your use of materials, because I guess most people, if you were to just walk in here, you would think that Leonardo was actually just finding these materials and, you know, somewhere on the streets of New York, and then bringing them into his studio and assembling them. But actually, you're buying these brand new materials
Home Depot.
From Home Depot. So his loyalty card is like stacked. And also, you said weathering these?
Yeah, you become the weather.
You become the weather.
Yeah.
Okay, so
that means
what does that mean? Because right now I'm looking at a tornado. Are you the tornado or the hurricane here, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can be that if necessary. You know, it's a matter of being understanding how things are made and aligning yourself with nature and not actually, you know, abusing it. You know, you understand that you're a part of it. So it's easy for me to sort of, you know, age things. You know, it's like it's not really a, you know, I just, you know, I mean, it's the physical it takes to sort of like create. It's always or it has at this moment becoming more problematic because as I'm getting older, things are starting to break. Literally, you know, new hands. I need new hands. I'm gonna need knee surgery in 2 months. So this is all part of the level of commitment to make these things. Yes, bone breaking, but it's also rewarding. So, you know, it's a route that I need to take in order to sort of make what I make. You know, so yeah, I become the weather. I transform brand new material, turn it into something that looks or echoes found. You know, but indeed, you know, it's part of my vocabulary, is my voice.
Yeah, and I like that aspect of nature because one of your processes of weathering is actually burning, as you mentioned.
No, I don't burn.
You just say you.
I smoke. I
smoke.
made careful not to say burn.
I
was smoking it on the stove.
You smoke it on the stove.
Yeah, steaming it.
But
the burning I stay away from.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Because between burning and found, I mean, already within found objects, there's the echo of all these other lives. The juice is already there, so it's almost like, for me, it's like a cheat. So burning falls right in line with that too. Burning is exactly, I mean, there's a history in our minds about where burning takes you. You know what I mean? And so I have a tendency to sort of stay away from things, you know, burning things, yeah. So all these things are actually look burn, but they're actually, it's like a wash.
A wash.
Yeah. So it's layers of black that have to happen in order to build it up. And if you're a viewer, you may go to burnt, but you also will travel in other places and you read on the material because of that. If it was burnt, then you would just see burnt.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're also using colored sand.
That's allowed.
That's allowed. Okay. Also in the works in the small room here, and here I'm assuming we're seeing cotton. Is that also cotton on the base? In the works, and maybe even slate.
There's a lot of material. I mean, it's all materials that I've gone through throughout my history is now being reintroduced in the new work. So I'm mining, you know, like with my disciples. You know, you guys are, you know, like using materials and things and feeling that this is an avenue that you can take. I already have like a catalog of materials that I can actually still pull from. Yeah. You know, so it's this kind of I think once you find your voice, there's no fear really of using different materials. You know, you're going to come out in that material. You know.
Yeah, and within material, there, of course, comes composition. And so I'm really intrigued between the two approaches. I guess the composition, and maybe you see them similar between the way you're composing the installation, which seems a little bit more of deconstruction and reconstruction, as opposed to the wall works, which seem to have more of a repetition, grid, synchronicity, and then there's things like this piece here, which kind of brings it all together. And so I was wondering if you could maybe speak about what's going through your mind as you move from piece to piece and how you're composing this
Well,
great
it's
composing.
interesting. I mean, the way you sort of describe all that, you're describing in a way that's linear. It's like an artist would actually believe that that's how all this works in your head. In my head, it's like scrambled. You know, so all this stuff is like coming at me, and I have to get it out.
Yeah.
And I have so many levels of realization and facility that I can use in order to sort of make that happen. That comes from years and years of beating it like a drum. You know, you understand their rhythms. There are certain cycles that you can sort of like access in order to sort of create. So there's never a time when I'm left without the means to sort of resolve these questions that I'm asking. So if you're talking about composition, for instance, I know that I can go all the way back to the compositions I was doing when I was making paintings in the 70s, you know? And the kind of things that DC and Marvel were attracted to, those things still come up. I mean, the action aspect of these is, you know, one of a lovely friend of mine was in her writings, B, she's out there somewhere, said something about the levels of drawing that's happening in the installation. Very perceptive. Yeah. You know, and I think that in the end, it's all those things, and nothing is left out. Yeah. You know, I've already sort of deep dive into like just about any way you can sort of like bend material and actually realize composition.
Do you consider this drawing?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Listen, if you go in with the mindset that you're a sculptor or you're a painter or you're, you know, whatever, you're screwed. I think when you're doing this, you better be thinking that you're drawing. You know what I mean? This is, you just loosen up, man. Let's get rid of those categories and just like, you know, very easily sort of like, you know, create these bridges. Yeah. You know, that are all encompassing. So when you're speaking to, you know, you folks who are also complicit in finishing these works, you know, you're open to, you know, listening. And I think for me, that's the most important thing. Listening is not a weakness, you know. Being able to ask opinions about even what you're creating and just sort of getting feedback from people. It's like this is a way to sort of continue to sort of grow, and also to continue to sort of have questions, be a part of how you grow. You know, so important. You know, and that's a life philosophy. That's not an art philosophy. It's a life philosophy. Yeah.
And how do you, as someone who's been making work since, you know, their adolescence, continue to be inspired, continue to grow, continue to find, you know, the purpose, the means, the energy to keep up, wake up every day to go into your studio?
Well, man, it's the fact that you guys are out there making things and, you know, killer work. I do collect art also, I collect Gumby. All the younger artists coming up that I really admire. So it's like, you know, these are the things that kind of like make, wow, it's like, I didn't think of that, you know? It's like, this is amazing, you know? Like, so just the idea that you guys are out there making things. And with the new technology, the technology that I didn't have back in the day, it's like, there's a whole other voice that's coming out. The instruments that are allowing people who probably wouldn't have even thought about the arts until the proper mechanisms came along to sort of introduce the fact that you are actually an artist, you know? You know, so from photography to video to, you name it, computers, all these things are doors that open up avenues of realization for people. Yeah. You know?
And I know you've traveled extensively, and so I was wondering, has any of that influenced the work?
Absolutely.
In any way? Anything you've seen, any places you've been to that maybe you could say like, oh man, this was like a moment that really shifted my practice?
Recently, I would say like Machu Picchu's one. Of course, China I did for like 4 years. Before China, color was not a part of the work. If you guys look online, you can kind of look at the works that came before.
We've noticed.
2019 or something like that. They're pretty much like, monotones or whatever. I mean, I just knew that I had to give up painting back in the 70s, you know, in order to sort of like, you know, like they say, tie my hands and sort of like try to figure out another way to make things. So color and all the things that I was doing before drawing, I said, okay, find another way, another way.
So what was the color in China?
That was from glazing and the porcelain works that, you know, I was with a foundry in Jingdezhen, China, which is mainland China. And, you know, living out there, like back and forth really like for 4 years, there was this kind of trade-off between what they were doing, which is craft, and these gigantic 25-foot vases, and they had kilns that actually they could cook things at that height there, and it was just amazing. And the alchemy involved in that, and the commitment and the history, you know, we're talking about ground zero for porcelain.
Right.
And the funny thing about it is, like, when I started smashing things, I started throwing it all out, you know? I would come back and they would say,
wait.
it's garbage.
Wait, they were smashing things?
I was smashing
You're
things.
smashing
I was
24...
I was smashing to get to this. Now, this hadn't been yet.
Okay.
You know, so I didn't know what I was looking for. I just knew I had to smash what I was making.
Okay.
And when I would come
out
back...
of the porcelain?
Yes. And
You're in China smashing porcelain?
They would throw it out. And I'd come in, I said, where's my stuff? And they thought it was garbage, you know? So they would throw it out. So I was like, I said, no, this is the art. This is the art. And the interesting part about this is that they were throwing it out, but then sometime later, my friend in Shanghai called me and said, Leonardo, don't get upset. You know, don't get upset. So what's up? I said, well, I went to this fashion, this store, you know, a clothing store in Shanghai, and I saw your work there. And I said, I didn't make any work in this store. You know, I didn't do anything there. And she said, no, they were making copies, all my smash works.
Are you serious?
And it was down all over the wall, you know. So I was like, oh, it's like, that's interesting. She said, you're not pissed off? I said, no. I said, look what I came out of there with, you know.
Right.
So it's the Wild West there, man. So there was no copyright. So you go there making stuff.
You got bootlegged in China?
Yeah. Listen, it's a proud and defining moment. You know? Listen, they saw worth. 2 seconds ago, they were throwing it out. You know?
Right.
And now it's like, oh, now we get it. You know?
Yeah. So is the work that we're seeing in the back room here kind of residue of that experience?
Yeah,
Because this is very colorful work, especially that I've seen from you and I guess in a while. I've never seen work like this. This is colorful. So
more to come, baby.
Okay, I look forward to it. And so the color's coming from China, but then I'm also getting a little bit of, you know, Albers, you know, hard edge abstraction.
I'll grab that too.
Yeah.
And listen, back in the day, my God, from you name it. I mean, I think there's no one that's never been mentioned when describing my work. So I think no one's ever been left out. So Albers, yes. Ava Hess, yes.
Okay.
Louise Nelson, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, all of them. I grab all of them. I mean, you listen. I'm looking at your new work.
You know, it's so funny because I came here to the show. I'm actually using mirrors.
Oh, no.
I
put it out there. Did you put anything out there yet?
I'm happy to be in conversation.
Oh, no. Wait, okay, have you put the mirror things out there yet? Have you put them out
No, not yet. They're actually coming up in the show.
You're welcome to put them out now.
Oh, okay, thank you for your permission. But it's not like this. I mean, here you're still smashing things and putting them back together. And I feel like definitely within the mirrors, you're speaking to the essence of color, which is light.
That's
and within that, speaking to energy, atmosphere, you know, mirrors are very powerful. They reflect the environment. We can see ourselves within them. We can see our environment in them. They give a deep sense of consciousness. And so how are you, where did you get the mirrors from? Because the color came from the ceramic tiles, but the mirrors, I'm thinking maybe had another influence.
You know, I always say, you know, like when you, the viewer, is looking at the work, that the work should be reflective. It should be a mirror. You should see yourself. In that philosophy, I'm almost sure it made its way through that. But if you were to ask me, like, okay, how did that exactly? That's probably most poetic way to say that it actually came about because of the idea that there's a shared experience between the artist, the artwork, and the viewer. Because like I said, you guys are complicit in finishing the works, because I can only hand them out into the world, but the fact that I number them should give you it's an indicator on like how I see my role in this, is that you should be able to find yourself in the work, without me interjecting.
Right.
You shouldn't rely on me to tell you what you're seeing, Now, I hear from others, they tell me that actually the viewer wants you to tell them what they're seeing. And man, I can't wrap my head around that. Only recently, at 63, I'm only now wrapping my head around the idea that people need help to realize what they're seeing in front of. It never occurred to me. Yeah, that's the honest to God truth.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the hell?
Right.
I watch bodies, and if they're like black holes, these things are like black holes. So it's like you're sucked right into them. You know what I mean? It's like if you're interested, you're flowing right into it. So for me to interject and tell you what you're seeing and what your experience is, that is an interruption. From my perspective, it's an interruption.
Yeah. And you don't want that. You want people to come in. I mean, these are abstract works.
I can learn too.
Yeah.
Me coming in, interjecting and saying, asking what is your body contorting? What is this thing, how is it speaking to you? And they can give me the honest to God opinion about what they're realizing in the work. And that has been consistent all throughout my long art life, is that once that, I realized that I can also be a part of the learning process, that I can actually, learn from you guys. It's like, man, that's liberating, Probably not good for selling art. Because if you guys want to be told what you should, how you should be feeling, it's like, I don't know if I can help you. But man, I just love that trade-off. I love the back and forth, Yeah.
Yeah. The exchange.
The exchange is absolutely necessary for me.
Yeah. Between the artist and the artwork, and then the artwork and the viewer. Yeah.
How do you deal with that, Alteronce?
I'm a very selfish person, so I just make art for me. And so, I feel like if I am intrigued by it, it's getting me, because I look at a lot of art, and I see, I go to some museums, I go to galleries at least once a week, and so I'm constantly looking, and I travel a lot as well. And so I feel like I'm constantly trying to make something in my studio that gets me going, that I'm trying to one up myself every time I make a painting. And so if I make a good painting, I'm like, I got something there. So then I'll take what I learned from that and try to level up in a sense. And so I think if I'm excited about it, that, someone else is going to see it, they're also going to get excited about it. And so that's kind of and then, when people see my work, they tell me all types of stuff. I'm really into titles too, so I title
You're
things.
into titles.
I'm into titles, so
Okay.
I think that helps me kind of gives a little ad lib or put a little layer on top of the work. But you don't title things at all. No. You don't like titles.
No. But this is great to be able to have a conversation with someone who is total. I wouldn't say exactly opposite, because the visuals actually are similar.
Yeah.
The end result is similar. So you actually navigating this whole thing, this idea that that what you're gleaning from this is self-motivating, right? And I think that's kind of special. I mean, I don't know that one. I don't know that one like you know it anyway. And I'm intrigued by it. But it's like I know that there's a whole other a way of thinking about your role in the art in the world. I mean, really, it's like how do you sort of come to terms with the finality of what you're creating and why you're creating it. All those become issues, and you have to develop a philosophy.
Yeah.
In order to sort of to continue to sort of navigate your path, because your path is not like any other artist, believe it or not.
No, for sure. I feel like everyone's on their own path. And, but you have to realize what your path is as you're walking it. Like the path isn't necessarily laid out for you.
Right.
So you have to kind of have faith knowing that this is my path. Like you could have went to, you know, drawing for DC and Marvel. That could have been a whole other career. You could have graduated from Cooper and went to a teaching career. But in the back of your head, to some degree, you knew your path was to come here. To go this route. You know?
Yeah, you know, and I mean at a young age, and fighting all the way through because, you know, and my mother, she was not necessarily supportive. She saw it as a something that was in the way of my education and would try to beat it out of me. It was something like an exorcism, you know. So it didn't work.
It didn't work.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be here, you know. But like, but these are the kind of challenges that fine tune, you know, who you are.
Yeah.
You know?
What advice would you give to artists in the room, emerging artists in the room, students in the room, artists who have been making work for decades and trying to get to the level that you're at in terms of showing and just supporting yourself off your art? Like, what advice would you give them?
First of all, do your thing. Do your thing. Do it till the wheels come off. You know, be committed. You know, and you know, it's a way of life. For me, it was, you know, it was natural for me to sort of like, you know, like if something got in the way, I just went around it. You know, it's like you don't have to like, you know, literally like beat down all these walls in order to, not from my perspective anyway. You go around these obstacles and get at what you need to get at. But the being born an artist there are levels of commitment to that. And I think that having an understanding of like what role you play in this, all the shoulders that you're standing on, all the artists that came, and understanding what the journey is. And I think it's for me, it seems very simple. It's not complicated. It's very simple. It's not, it looks complicated, but it actually
It's very complicated.
No, man, it's like this is some easy shit. I mean, really, it's like you know, just get out of the way, man. It's like I'm trying to make this, and it's like okay, and then you find like years later, say, wait a minute, I never got married. I never had kids. It's not like I planned it. I mean, that would be a genius move to be able to plan your life in that way and say like, oh, I'm never gonna have kids, never gonna be married. I'm just gonna make art, and like, and then it's like, it just kind of happened. I didn't plan it. It was just like what's happening because of the commitment, and the life is every day you get up. You know, like you know exactly what you're going to be doing. You know, like the super additive is, you know, that you know you ask a question, you have the ability to travel to, you know, to sort of get those questions answered, and then get back to the studio. I mean, you're a receiver of information. Yeah. You know.
What's one mistake you made throughout the course of your career that you would like to share for those of us who, you know?
Mistake.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah, that's a good question, and that would be a question for everybody in here.
Because we all make mistakes, right?
I think that you would have to sort of like get an idea, like what is a mistake? You know what I mean? Because the things that we sometimes consider mistakes are the very things that guide you to where you need to be.
Exactly.
So I found out to be a consistency throughout my life. That there have been these simple things like, you know, you're working on your place in New York and a rock fell over into the neighbor's yard, and now it's turned into an issue. Next thing you know, you got a place in San Antonio. So was that a mistake? Not the, how did that play out? It's like, wait a minute. It's like now you got more real estate, you know, and you got like a place where you go like that was a beautiful error, you know. So how does these things like, you know, what do you decide was a mistake? You know, it's like putting up that fence, or you know, the gift of having your ranch in San Antonio. It's like, oh wow, I would do that one over again.
Right.
It seemed like maybe it was an error building a fence, but like I said, it depends on the outlook.
Right.
I see them all as super positives. I mean, you're going through life, and all these things are kind of lining up. You know, maybe even before you even get there, you know, for you to sort of fall in the sink. It's like, you know, there's a goal here. You may not necessarily be fully aware of it, but the end result is like, wow, you know, it's like, how did I get here? You know, and it's like, it seems like magic, you know.
I love that.
Yeah. But if we have that philosophy of leaning towards super positives and not negatives, then yeah, all these supposed whatever you said, those
mistakes, yeah.
mistakes
Mistakes or errors.
that
Or,
word doesn't really
like
exist. It doesn't exist in that way. It's like,
yeah.
Those are necessities that get you to where you need to be.
Right. And so I believe now's maybe a good time to open it up to the room.
I was going to say, that seems like a perfect
Okay.
talking about what's a mistake, how our journeys are unexpected but point to the right direction, with kind of grace for the audience to ask questions of either Alteronce or Leonardo, and John will point the microphone at you so it will be amplified. Question? Colin?
Leonardo, first let me acknowledge the mastery of your material. I mean, and the intimacy and the depth of your vocabulary. So
Thank you.
It's just really invigorating. My question is, do you consider your work landscape?
Landscape. Do you see landscape?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Question
I
answered.
just wondered, have you ever played around with terra? Right, you're using earth, you're using wood. So I was just wondering if you thought about it as landscape.
I can't say I know that my understanding of composition, how things fall together, come together, that's in there, absolutely. So you're right on track. Yeah, but if you saw like motherboards, you probably be right on track too. So all these things are all a part of how we collectively see the world. If you're an artist, you have a tendency to sort of record that information. It goes in your back pocket, and then it comes out. At some point you'll use it. That hence why you travel, you gather information, sometimes through osmosis, just like being a receiver, an antenna that's planted someplace, and then receiving that information. Then you got to give it back. So that is consistently throughout my, and I think Alteronce also, because he travels. But how does travel affect your work?
Yeah, travel is probably one of the main parts of my, practice, in terms of like inspiration. I had my artistic awakening when I did a study abroad at the age of 19. I went to Barcelona, Spain. And that was my first time outside of the country. It was my first time stepping foot inside of an art museum. It was the Picasso Museum. I didn't know who Picasso was. We did a Gaudi walking tour, and I was an architecture major when I landed in Spain, but when I landed back in the States, I was not an architecture major anymore. And so I feel like I consistently need to change my space, place, awareness, because I feel like this planet is so big and diverse. And if I'm just staying in my neighborhood, going to the same coffee shop, the same bodega, walking the same blocks, I'm not exposing myself to as much of this world as it has to offer. And just like Leonardo, going places and getting inspired by art histories or artists or crafts that we don't necessarily get here in New York, or that much exposure, So it's like, I enjoy traveling and just taking in different cultures, being a stranger in the village, and soaking it all up and learning new processes of how to create. And then bringing that material and palette and exposure back to the studio is something that really gets me going.
The gentleman in the purple shirt had a question.
Hey, another artist.
Yeah.
I know that guy.
What you said about burning was super intriguing to me. It was really actually very powerful. I felt like there's a lot to unpack in that historically and culturally when we talk about burning. And looking at the object pieces in space, it's interesting to see that there's a back side and a front side, or that there's two sides, that there's color on one side and black on the other. And the idea of the work doing that heightens the sense of artifice in my mind. Because if it were a found object, there wouldn't be that distinction, which I think is fairly concrete in what you're doing. And you see that happening with the tiles in here, that there's the, let's say, color on one side and black on the other, so that there is a double-sided situation that makes one think about what the material is or how it functions in the work. Or I think it's really, this is more of a comment, a couple of comments, just like what's really beautiful about the way in which you're controlling the color is how you're actually able to heighten the sense of what the black is relative to the other information.
That's a colorist talking there.
Right. Right. I think
That's a real understanding of.
I think your work underscores a sense of resilience, because again, bringing up the idea of fire and the horrific of that, and the fact that you continue through drawing to make and map new structures speaks to, and change the structure, speaks to a certain kind of resilience in your continuity. But I beg to differ about the work being pre-color and post-color. I think your color and the work you did from when you were at thread waxing space onward was gorgeous, beautiful, historic, super memorable to me. I don't forget that work. And I don't understand in ways which people say, I'm not using color. How can they even say that, because color is everything?
Yeah. What he said. Beautiful, beautiful. Thanks, Donald.
I just first want to say I saw photos of this show, and being able to actually experience it and be here, like when I walked in, I immediately just couldn't say anything. I guess it was good because there was no talking. But I've had this question because I've been looking at your work, and I've always been interested in this act. And we spoke a little bit about your connection to the earth, and this act of collecting things and the found object, and sort of augmenting the found object. I was curious about, when you're arriving upon an object, are you thinking about how long it's going to last, or maybe like how archival the thing's going to be when you're making it, or are you thinking, I got to make this thing and I got to just think about how long it's going to last afterwards?
Okay, so it's not found, right? We know that, right? Yeah. Okay, so we're talking about actual material that you decide to use and whether or not it has longevity. I think if you use that as a like a point of, whether or not you're going to be using that material, it could keep you from actually expanding your vocabulary. So I tend to use or go after materials that want to disintegrate, and it looks as though it actually is disintegrating. But then, of course, I figure out how to sort of make it so it doesn't do that, you know what I mean? So it's always a point of understanding first what the visuals are for something that actually is on its way out. But to actually be able to capture it, midway, and then make it so that it actually is still with us, So that's just the alchemy of like what I do. So understanding, I'm not just going to just make things that's going to destroy itself. It's just not, the marketability is not good for that. So Mary would not like that. And I don't think your collectives will like that. But I don't use that as, this is all sort of figured out before the work ever got out onto the marketplace. We're talking when I was younger and I was, decided that this is what I'm going to be doing with materials. I'm going to be using untraditional or non-traditional materials. It's just a matter of like I said, learning your craft and understanding what your place is in terms of weather. To what degree are you actually becoming a weather, and at what point do you decide that you're going to sort of stop the disintegration process? So, and then understanding how to do that. So this is just, it's just an education in your craftsmanship. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for your generosity in sharing
Thank you.
your process and journey with us today. I've admired your work for a very long time, and I enjoy the physicality of the work. When you start with a new piece, do you start with sketches, or do you just start working with material, or do you kind of work out some ideas in a sketchbook? How does the work begin when the idea, the light bulb goes off?
Well, honestly, sketching does not really happen. It's a matter of, like, you have, I call it the 7 crying babies. That means you have 7 works that you're rotating in the studio. So they have a tendency to assist each other. And nothing really is sacred in the studio, so there's all, like, it looks almost like this. There's all these remnants all over the place. And I just like, then that twist that, and it's like, old works can become new works. It's all inclusive. So there are no slumps, because if you have these 7 crying babies, it's like they all need your attention. So, once that one goes out into the world, another one comes in and replace it, So it's an ongoing kind of process where previous work help future works, Mm-hmm.
Donna, did you have a question?
I was going to ask a very similar question. Mary, at the beginning, talked about the tension between chaos and order, and I was wondering how you find a balance between plotting your work out and working intuitively. But you've sort of answered that, I think.
No, I can answer it again. I think the idea of balancing act, like I said, I think that we all probably have a natural sort of barometer, within ourselves, to sort of guide us in terms of when something is realized or when it needs more. Consistently, like when the idea of chaos, I've heard it said 2 different ways when it comes to chaos. It's like, okay, people are either saying chaos or they're seeing something structurally sound, and just the ability to be able to sort of make it do that and actually look as though it's still in the motion of actually disintegrating or headed into its other iteration. So I think that, all these are, like I said, is a part of having an understanding. Once you find your voice, it really doesn't matter, like how you enter in or what materials you're working with. It's like you will find a balance on how to sort of make all these things work in congruent with each other. So they all have to come together in order to make sense within your world. And hopefully when you guys see it, it starts to sort of become reflective of what you're feeling when, and it becomes a part of your journey. Yeah, I hope I answered it.
So, Leo, how did you conceptualize this show?
Well, understanding the architecture is actually, because this piece, we can let you guys in on the secret, don't tell anybody. But this piece actually was shown here in my first exhibition. Keep that in mind. How many different iterations now? 6, I think we got, right? 6 iterations, right? The hammer, we got the Wadsworth, we got
Was that
the
2019?
chapel. 2019? 2019. So it's at 6 iterations. So yes, this piece is the very same piece. You can go back, look on your Instagram, and you can see, it was on that wall, and it was doing this thing. And so I think that for me, this is the gift that keeps on giving. It's like the material is one thing, but they always will continue to sort of like suggest other possibilities. So like I said, understanding like the fact that this piece is moved into 6 different situations should tell you that, yeah, indeed, architecture can and will define these kind of installations. They should. You should be respectful of the space that you're working in. Yeah.
I feel like the next show, the whole gallery is going to be the installation.
I think we did that last year.
No, it was just the back room. It was just the back wall,
no,
right?
that was. You missed the middle show then.
Oh, it was a middle show.
There was a middle show. There's 3 shows.
Or is it the whole room?
I think that, yeah, it was an experiment. I need to sort of like get that out. Mary still asks me questions about that show. I knew it was an experiment. I said, we need to sort of like realize that architecture and works are bleeding one into the other. Oh no, it was like, okay, now extricate this from that and say, okay, I want to buy the whole thing. Can I buy just this section? It was all like one to the other. Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mary, for allowing that.
This is any comment about climate change with this piece?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're seeing that, right? That's exactly what it is. Yeah, you didn't miss. You didn't miss. You got it. You hit it right on the head. Yep. Yep.
Are there any
Leonardo, I know that music has a significant impact in some of your work. Does it impact all of your work, just a different body of music?
Well, I mean, no, music. I mean, music. You say music, but it's a lot of things going on in the studio. So you got TV going, you got music. So it's like, yeah. So all these things, I'm sure, you know, like when I'm in San Antonio, it's just like just the big sky and you're surrounded by the naturalness of your situation. You know, the influence of that, of these things, how they go into your body, absolutely. It's so yeah.
But is it a different
Oh, yeah, it's like different
genre of
tonations.
music? I mean, I know, is it 126? I'm trying to
123.
123.
I don't remember all the numbers, but that's the one I remember. 123.
But that seemed to follow.
Musical notes.
Yeah. And so, was it a certain kind of music that affected that, or just the same background?
And a lot of people will say improvisational jazz, and you know, I mean, any art form that continues to sort of like reach, right? You know, jazz does that, right? Reaches, like, you know, we listen to Coltrane, he's like, you know, goes off in these tangents, he's reaching, right? I think that this plays a role in the high arts, because we're also trying to stretch and trying to get to that place. We don't necessarily get there, but we're actually on that journey trying to get there. And you know it when you hear it in music. You know, you listen to Coltrane, you can hear he's like reaching, he's reaching. You know, it's like, and that's what they call it, reaching. He's reaching. Yeah. Doesn't get there though, but he's trying to get there. Yeah.
One quick one. You included a poem, a bit of poetry in one of your catalogs. Do you write? Was that a one-off, or do you write poetry occasionally?
Writing can and does come up, but it's something that was between us. Yeah, you'll find out about writing when you guys finally put me in the dirt. Yeah.
Well, I think on the note of we're all reaching is a great way to sum up this afternoon. So thank you, Alteronce.
Amen.
Thank you. I was good.
I see you something else. I'm glad I grabbed you. I'm glad I grabbed you.
Leo, and thank you, a marvelous audience. So thank you.